Hello, everybody. My name is Vivian. I want to introduce some people I've been working with in Brighton over the last year who've been helping me choose, identify and map the city's special trees. And we've prepared a presentation giving you just a snapshot of some of those very lovely trees. My first guest tonight is Peter. Peter Bourne is a local resident, and without whom I wouldn't have got this far. Peter will tell you that he has a huge background in elm tree research and has been extremely helpful to this project that I set up now over a year ago. So Peter, over to you.
Hello, my name's Peter. I've done looking after the National Elm Collection for a few years. I've also a founding member of the Tree Register. I work for Wikipedia and I've had 35 years experience with elm trees. Yes, so basically the research I've done covers a lot of history of the background of the elms before and after the Great Storm in 1987. And it's also included helping data for the achievement of getting the National Elm Collection status, which was around about 1997-98. And ever since then, basically, I've been a large participation in the local council's regime to save their elm trees from Dutch elm disease. We've had a few problems, but we've also had a few uplifting results. So I'd like to share with them now. The history of the city of the elm trees, right? Yes, basically the elms go back as much as 400 to 500 years in the city. The main area is Preston Park, and Preston dates right back to about 400-500 years. Mainly in those days, the elm was used for hedgerow situations and for screening private houses. Later on, it was used for ornate purposes for street trees. As the town grew, basically the largest estate was the Stanford family estate, and they managed to collect a large amount of elms, including some very rare trees, just to make the street tree scene a bit more, if you like, interesting. Because if you have one particular species of elm going through the city, then it obviously becomes a bit boring. The National Elm Collection, that was started around about 97, as I say, 97, 98. And all the data I collected it from previous years, especially in 1988, I was actually helped to contribute to the National Collection. Dutch elm disease basically has been with us ever since the year 1970, and the local community came together to put an idea forward about a control system. The following year, the local government took on this control system, and they've been running it ever since. The Tree Register, they have a lot of interest within the local trees, because some of the trees have been measured, a lot of them by myself and Owen Johnson, who's the Tree Registrar at the moment. I'm one of the founding members of the Tree Register, and we used to go around with Alan Mitchell and Vicky Schilling recording trees within the city. And some of those trees are still national champions even today, mainly because there's no other representation of those particular trees, or because there's none actually bigger than them. And for this, there is a national champions list, a European champions list, and a worldwide champions list. Obviously, if they're only trees that are locally champions in national terms, then they're basically just for the national area. But you can get some for the county, so you get some that may be just big enough to be the champions in their local area. So yes, the champion trees are quite a very important part of the actual setup.
Peter, can I ask you, how is it that you, an elm researcher and elm expert, are living in Brighton City, capital of elm trees? I mean, that's just extraordinary.
Just by sheer chance. Basically, it started with one solitary elm in the woodlands up to Stanmore. And if it wasn't an elm, if it was something else, then I'd be studying naturally. But It was just by chance that I was actually working up in the woods, and this particular Dutch elm was reflecting its leaves in the pond. So it was a very surreal day, very surreal moment, and that basically captivated me and basically started the research. So yeah, if I wasn't here, then it probably never happened.
So you're going to tell us about the champion trees now.
Yes, the champion trees. The champion trees, we have quite a few in Brighton Hove. Now, the particular slide we see at the moment is the Ulmus minor-itinia. Now, this used to be known as Ulmus procera, which is the English elm. The name was changed recently because they found the species came from the south of France, and the Roman Celtic tribe at the time, well, at that particular period where it was, established, was known as the Itinia. So it's now known as Ulmus minor-itinia. It's an ancient hollow tree. This is the Preston Park elm. Now, it used to be known as the Preston twin because there were two of them, but recently it lost its neighbour, and that was a very sad event because that particular tree was the larger of the two. And by some chance, when a storm hit that tree and took a branch off, it made it smaller than its neighbour. So the one you see in the picture now was a champion when the other tree was around, and has now gained its status. But unfortunately, it is now the only one of the two that survived. Now, this one is 400 years old, which makes it the world's oldest tree. So it's a world champion in that status, but it's also European and largest and oldest because they recently found a tree in Australia which dimensions were much, much bigger.
Thank you.
This tree is a British Isles champion. Now, that basically means it's the largest in this country. Doesn't mean to say there is another tree that is bigger worldwide, but the chances are much greater anyway, and there have been trees found in Australia that are anyway. But presumably, there could be a tree in the British Isles which is bigger, but it's not on the record. So therefore, this one is on the records and it is known as being the national champion. Now, this is Ulmus hollandica red-eye. Now, this is a golden elm. It's very beautiful, very golden, and it literally has a very fine conic shape. And it grows in a place called Blakers Park, which is quite a small local park. It is the largest in height and girth, which is unusual in most cases for most trees, but it does occur when you get the tree's height and the width being exactly a champion height. This is a European champion. Now, this is Ulmus minor virgata. Ulmus minor virgata is extremely rare. There are some known small trees dotted around Europe, but nothing of this size left in the world. This has a very upright form. It's a very beautiful shape, very similar to the American elm, but this is a type of field elm. The leaves do ascend like this. They grow straight upright, and it does form this peculiar vase and bowl shape. Now, it is, as I say, extremely rare. The actual identification of this tree took at least 10 years to actually find it because the data wasn't made available until recently when it was put on the internet. Literally the leaves and the tree pictures came from Holland to make it, and they were library pictures. And because I say there's no other tree of this particular size left in the world. So this is the tallest and largest of its type in Europe, but there could possibly be the largest and the tallest in the world. Now, this is an East Sussex County champion, and it's also one of the city's proudest trees. This is probably one of the most photographed trees in the whole of the city. The reason being, it stands right in the iconic gardens of the Royal Pavilion. Now, this particular area is very frequented by lots and lots of tourists, and we probably see, well, we used to see at least 2 million tourists every year coming into the area, especially foreign students learning to learn English and learn about the cultures in the area. This particular tree stands in the gardens almost opposite the Royal Pavilion. It's got a very large sweeping growth, and basically it forms like a tabletop. It's semi-weeping, and there is another form called Camperdown elm, which is very weeping. The two usually get mixed up, but this is the larger of the two, if you like. There is another tree identical in someone's private garden, and we presume that these two trees came from the same nursery. This was planted in 1897 near the end of the reign of Queen Victoria, and is one of the, say, very few of this particular size left in the country, let alone the world. As I say, it's the most photographed tree because of its splendour, so it's an absolute gem.
Peter, we've got about a dozen trees on our map, and on our tree trail, a dozen elm trees, but there are many, many more, aren't there?
That's right.
We're hoping to put all of them, all of the champions, on the map and the app in the next year.
Yeah. There's about 125 different types of elm in Brighton and Hove, which is more than any other city in the world. And of them, there's quite a lot of champions. We compare data that we get from several countries worldwide, and basically that gives it the world status. Now, we obviously got connections with people that are European status, and we may face something that's not so big as the world champion, but it can be quite easily a European champion. And likewise, down the scale, it comes from British Isles size as well. So there are lots of following those categories of county, national, European and worldwide champions. So we've got those categories all in the city of Brighton and Hove.
Peter, before you finish, one final question. Why do they thrive so well in the city, elm trees?
Elms are alkaline loving plants. They don't like acidic soils that much. Well, saying that, they probably do grow on acidic soils. It has been proved, obviously. But they do like alkaline soils. Now, there's a lot of alkaline soils here. We don't get a lot of Dutch elm disease because we are protected by the downs. The downs are very chalky, and not all trees will grow on them, but elms do grow quite well on lime soils. So with the chalk, it's not much of a problem for elms. In some cases, the elms actually thrive better on the chalk than they would do in the lowland areas. And also because they do put up with an awful lot of sea winds, so we can actually grow them on the coast as well. And there will be some planting done on the coast in the coming years.
Thank you, Peter. Can I have my slide, please? Right, well, that's a small look at the elm trees in this project, but let's go back to the beginning. And I want to talk about my vision, because I guess that's what it was. At the start of lockdown, March 2020, I saw for the first time at an exhibition in London something called the Great Trees of London Map. And I absolutely loved it to bits. And I thought, why can't we do this for Brighton? I knew a little about some of Brighton's trees, but not very much. Unlike Peter, I'm not an expert. And on the way back on the train, with lockdown imminent, I decided that this was going to be my lockdown activity. And in the exercise slot that we were all allowed, I was going to get on my bike with my mobile phone and go about photographing the trees that I knew then. I've got to know many more since. But before I did that, I wanted to trace some of the experts behind the London map. And I managed to track down Simon Edwards, who was the Tickle Trail creator, which was very exciting because it meant that I was communicating with somebody who not only knew about tree trails, but was very helpful to me. How I went about choosing the trees was a bit random, I have to say. There was no great science attached to it. I knew and loved a lot of the trees in Brighton without knowing very much about them, but managed to locate Peter, who I'd never come across, never heard about, and that meant that I had access to somebody who not only knew a lot about elms, but was also very helpful about many of the other trees. So in a sense, that became my lockdown activity. And the first trees that I found were actually appeared on the Festival 2020 site, the London Urban Tree Festival 2020 site. I had no idea that I would then be building on that small presentation and adding a further 45, which we're doing this time round. To be honest, it's been quite hard work, largely thanks to COVID, because getting access to people and experts has been very difficult, as it has been across the field. I knew I had to get some volunteers behind me, that I wasn't going to be able to do this on my own. And so with access to members of the Brighton and Hove Green Spaces Forum, of which I am a committee member, I managed to recruit some volunteers, James being one of them. James is with us tonight. The Green Spaces Forum is a forum that brings together about 70, 80 green spaces groups in the city who are volunteers looking after their patch. Their patch might be very small or it might be quite extensive. So I built the help and support needed before embarking, I suppose, quite seriously on this last summer at a very difficult time. And it's only at this tail end of the exercise that I've managed to get local council support, which I was very keen on, because it seemed to me that a project like this didn't have a short life, that this is something that is going to grow and grow. And what I wanted to do was to bring to the attention of Brighton's Great and Good the huge scope that I think they're missing in order to promote and celebrate the trees in the city. We have an extraordinary collection of trees, many of them unique to Brighton, which I didn't know at the time, and which have become sort of iconic in their own way. And I like to tell you a little bit about my favourite two. One of them is a Caucasian wingnut. I'd never heard about a tree called a Caucasian wingnut, but it's absolutely stunning in Stammer Park, which is a park outside Brighton, just under 500 acres of open country. And here it is in all its glory, also known as a Caucasian walnut, from the Caucasian part of Europe, Armenia, Russia, Iran. People sitting under it, I'm sure, have no appreciation or understanding of its significance. Very few grown. There's a very special specimen in the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh, but it's a very big tree, very spreading, so doesn't lend itself easily to gardens. The other tree I picked out couldn't be more different. It's quite extraordinary. It's an English yew, which it's difficult to understand that it's actually alive. It's believed to be the oldest tree in Brighton. I've been told, and I don't know whether this is correct, that it's over 1,000 years old. It's standing opposite its trunk. It is difficult to see how it's actually sustaining itself, but it truly is, and at certain times of the year looks very, very lovely. It's standing in the churchyard in Stammer, this large open space outside Brighton, along with several other yew trees, all of which are special, but this is particularly special. And also in the churchyard is a beautiful Judas tree, a mulberry tree, and an exceptionally large box. So within the space of a few meters in a tiny churchyard is this extraordinary collection of trees. And that's perhaps just a microcosm of what you can see in Brighton in different parts of the city. So I focused on, for the purposes of this presentation, just a couple of my favorites, but there are many more. And I think it's time that Brighton residents and people beyond actually got to see and love these trees. On the whole, I think they remain unknown. We have blue plaques around the city celebrating famous people. We celebrate iconic buildings like our Royal Pavilion, our Corn Exchange, but somehow trees haven't got a look in. And I would like to begin to put that right. There's understandably a lot of focus at the moment on problems with trees, problems with Dutch elm disease, which Peter has talked about, problems with ash dieback, hundreds of trees having to be felled, but not enough focus on the beauty and the majesty and the grace, let alone what trees contribute to our wider world. So I'm delighted we've got this far, and hope that we'll come back next year and be even bigger. Right, shall we go to James?
Okay, yes. Well, yes, good evening, everybody. I am a chartered landscape architect manager by profession. My day job is managing trees for East Sussex highways, so I do this for a living. I'm also a Brighton resident, tree enthusiast all my life. And like Vivian, I'm a member of the Brighton and Hove Green Spaces Forum and also the Brighton and Hove Wildlife Forum. I'm one of her tree team even volunteers, and I've been very, very pleased indeed to work with Vivian to support her and help to make this happen. Next slide. One of the first things we did was to discuss the possible content. I mean, obviously, as Peter's been saying, the number of elms in Brighton is incredible. The variety of them is stunning, and we're very, very lucky to have those. One of the things I argued for, though, was very early on was the fact that we should not only necessarily represent elms, but also the other species that we're lucky to have in the city as well, and not necessarily only celebrate size or rarity, but also prominence and cultural significance. One of the big problems was actually finding the trees. We had from various lists a rough idea where a lot of them were, but we've had to use a lot of local knowledge and suggestions from people in this respect. Finding the trees physically, some of the sites have been totally impenetrable, some of them have been privately owned. The other thing is it's all very well saying to somebody there is for example, a Fraxinus chinensis in Stanmer Park, but you've got to know what it looks like to find it. So, practical problems like this. Once we found them, though, we were all out there photographing using the latitude longitude app to actually place them on Simon's excellent app. So that's been very useful. And then finally, a really big shout out to my son, Rob, who's a graphic designer, because obviously at the end of the day, we needed somebody to design our map. And luckily for us, maybe not for him, he was furloughed during the COVID outbreak for a while and managed to find enough time to actually put our map together. Anyway, next slide, please. Simon, next slide, please. Thank you. Just to illustrate one of the problems, there's a very nice shot here of the Stanmer Arboretum, which is something, before I got involved in this project, I didn't even know it existed. But apparently it was planted in the 1960s by a chap called John Gapper, Stanmer resident, who is still around. Originally, it was an educational resource for parks training at Stanmer, and has a huge number of trees within it, with an extraordinary number of species. It is in need of a bit of management and a bit of interpretation, and maybe this is another another job for us going forward. We'll have to see. But anyway, there we go. And if I can have my final slide, Simon, please. My final slide, just like to provide a total contrast to all our wonderful elms and offer you, admittedly this is a winter shot, this is a tree called Pride of India, or golden rain tree, Colroyteria paniculata for the technically minded. For me, it says an awful lot about this particular part of Brighton. It grows in the Pavilion Gardens adjacent to the magnificent Ulmus horizontalis that Peter mentioned. In the summer, July, August, it has the most spectacular clouds of yellow flowers, followed by reddish tinged bladder-like fruits in the autumn. I went past it earlier on this week, and it's just beginning to come into leaf and looks spectacular then. So absolutely lovely tree, very tolerant of the maritime climate that we have here and of a chalky soil. So it should be planted more frequently, I think.
Good. Well, my name's Simon Edwards. I'm the creator of the Tickle system that allows friends groups and just ordinary people to create virtual tree map and app guides to an area. It's always struck me, that, and Vivian was talking about it earlier, that it's odd that we create guides to points of interest like buildings and architectural heritage, but somehow we've ignored the natural heritage around us that are our trees. There are some amazing trees to find on our doorsteps. I'm absolutely, truly honoured that Vivian and Peter and James have used the Tickle system to create the first ever online and app guide to what Brighton's wonderful trees, including the rarest and most special trees in the UK, the National Elm Collection. So I'm going to show you what they did, how you can use Tickle to explore Peterbourne's special trees of Brighton and Hove, and how you can generate and use a Tickle tree map, an app guide, perhaps in your own town. This is what you create with Tickle, okay? It's your own curated map. James has geolocated the trees of interest, and they've put their own logo, which is connects with the virtual map on this map. So they've got the special trees of Brighton and Hove logo there. People don't need to register with this. It's freely available on the internet. And underneath the map, there are the pictures of the trees, and there are the buttons that you can download the app, which make exploring the city easier. It's very easy to share this map. It has its own URL, so you can use that to direct people to the virtual presentation, and that's specific to this trail. And that also means you've got a QR code which you can use on the physical map, and James and Son has managed to put that on the physical map, so we can get it links both the virtual and physical map together. So how did they go about creating this trail? Well, I'm pleased to say it's very easy, and I'm not going to go into any detail about it, okay? The Tree Council, if you want information about creating a trail in your town, it's free. You can find information at the Tree Council. It's purely a matter of getting your camera, getting the app, taking a photo of the tree and geolocating it at the position. We'll give you a background access to the Tickle engine, so you can edit it from your PC when you're at home. But it's just simply a matter of pressing submit when you're standing at the tree. Full instructions on the Tree Council website. That isn't a misspelling. They have that's misspelt on their website. I assure you, at least I hope you can confirm, it's not too much of a trial creating these maps. Okay, so what do you see on the app? Well, this is a brilliant opportunity to explain this system. Okay, Tickle lists the trees that are around you just by order of proximity to you. Okay, and that's quite an important point about the whole process. So the trees nearest to you here, if we were in Stanmer Park, are all obviously in Stanmer Park. Every time you hit refresh, it brings the nearest tree to you at the top. And that means that there are 4 ways of exploring a place. You can go to the first one is you can go to your nearest tree and then keep going to your nearest tree without repeating any. So if you wanted to see all the trees, you could go to your nearest tree, which is this beech, and have a look at it, and then go to the Caucasian wingnut, the one you like, Vivian, and I think, and so on. And keep repeating that. And that way you go round by an approximation, all the trees, by an approximation of the shortest possible distance. Or alternatively, you could just be in Stanmer Park and not open the app. Who wants to follow an app when you're wandering around Stanmer Park? But then when you come to an interesting looking tree, if you open the app, the nearest tree will be top of that list. So you won't have to search for it. The information will just be at the top of the list. Very easy to do. The third way of exploring is just to look down the list and go straight to the tree you want to go and see. Might be that it's the 3rd time you've been here and you just want to go to one, or there's a particular British champion or European champion that you want to see. So you just scroll down this list and you find the tree and you go straight to it. There's a 4th way, which is to follow a sequence determined by the curator. The curator of the map can list all of these trees in a particular order or give a number so that you can go and follow in a specific order. But when there are 40 or 100 trees or 200 trees in Brighton, it's probable that you're going to do this over several days and start at different times and in different places. And that's probably not the most appropriate way of doing that. So we haven't numbered them or put them in an order here. And I think that's appropriate. So let's pick an example. We're in Stanmer Park and I fancy going to see this box that Vivian was talking about. And it's 3rd down on the list, this common box. So let's home in on that and have a little look to see what we see there. So the information you're given, there's a picture of the actual tree you're looking for. This solves James' problem a little bit and makes it easier for visitors. This isn't a hypothetical box tree. This is the actual tree you're looking for. And that picture is enlargeable from the app. It's connected to a web link which is chosen by the curator of the trail, which was or the map, which was you, which were you guys, and that can link to appropriate information about the trees. When I was setting this up, I was worried that there weren't going to be enough Wikipedia pages that dealt with specific elm types. And what I hadn't realized, of course, is that Peter has written all the Wikipedia pages for the elms beautifully. So there was a second time that it was able to open up the Wikipedia pages specific to correct elms. So that was a lovely little find for that. So you can click on that www link and in this case, we've linked it to the Woodland Trust information about the common box. It could equally go to video links or audio links or people's social media or their website. So it connects people not only with the trees, but with the group that's done it, connects with the trees physically and with the group virtually. The only other thing to say is that obviously there's a map. If you click on the map button, you'll see where the tree is. We don't always feature on this because here we are, we've got this situation where Google just produces a big green blob and nobody wants to be or can find anything in a big green Google blob. So we've got another exciting little bit, which is the Direct Me button, which is just a little arrow that pops up and it just guides you with a distance to the tree. That's really all there is to Tickle. The rest of it is the combination of a load of people's hard work and effort just finding the trees and putting the information in to share it. I'd love you to create maps like the Brighton team have done here for your town. If you want to, if you've been inspired by Vivian and Peter and James and the team, please just get in touch with me. If you've heard this video, it's not just contact at Tickle Me, it's Simon at Tickle Me. Thank you very much.
Simon, it's been so nice to have your support. I still haven't met you. We will meet in person one day. It's been funny working so intensely with people that you've not met. It's a strange cultural phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that the 60 trees on the map and on Tickle are just the beginning. And I think there are another 100 to come. There have been a number of other volunteers not here at this time who have helped with this. It's been good fun, but hard work.
Yes, it has. Thank you, Vivian. It's been wonderful working with you.
So Paul, now we'd like to hear from Paul, who's been very supportive in the final stages of this project.
Thank you, Vivian. So Great Trees of Brighton came to the council quite late to our awareness, but immediately we recognised this was something very special. And my role is, I guess I call myself second in command at Brighton and Hove City Council. I essentially deal with the developments within our parks and open spaces. But before this, I was actually in the Mayor's office where I helped develop this document called the Canopy Trees and Design, with the Trees and Design Action Group. And this is essentially trying to get people to really value trees more, particularly developers, designers, planners. So we wanted to do something that was a little bit more glossy brochure rather than a classic sort of tree document. Also developed the open spaces strategy, and within the open spaces strategy, it was said that we needed a tree strategy for the city. Brighton and Hove has never had a formally adopted tree strategy. It never formally had an open spaces strategy. So these are really, really new fundamental things that have been happening within the city over the last few years since I've been there. And I've been at the council for almost 7 years now. So the tree strategy is hot off the press in terms of, I think it will be, it's in circulation, but the formal consultation for it will be coming up within a few weeks. And what we learned from the open spaces strategy is that trees were the #1 assets within our parks and open spaces, which the public voted for. The open spaces strategy interestingly was the highest number of responses we ever had to a consultation. Typically, Brighton and Hove have about 200 to 300 people respond to our consultations on our online portal. The open spaces strategy had 3,500 responses. So people are very, very connected with their outdoors, and they are telling us that the trees are #1 for the assets that they care about within our city. So the tree strategy is currently available now, and there are a number of recommendations that come with it. Most of it are quite technical recommendations, because there's so much more work we need to do to get the service to the sort of gold standard that we want. We've got these amazing elms, we've got these amazing trees, and we really do want to reach to the best quality of service we can give for the city and our trees. So as you can see, there's 17,000 elm trees, more or less, in the city, over 100 different varieties, 12,000 street trees generally, of which 4,000 elms. And you can see lots of woodland. And just the last point here is that when we have elms on our planting, the cost of planting trees in our streets is very expensive. Just to put a whip in the ground could be 50 quid if somebody puts something in very small, just a metre or so high. But because elms love it so much in Brighton, they just terrorise those pavements. They will take up the road, the curbs and everything. And the cost of putting that back when unfortunately one dies can be very expensive. So we're having to really put in some good standards now for managing trees in terms of the tree pit designs. We're having to be much more thoughtful about the whole process so that we can continue to have big species trees within our streets. So And in order to enable that, we will be looking to use community infrastructure levy funding and Section 106 to pay for this going forward. That is our hope. We've still got it's a competitive process. This is Preston Park. We've got some, this is where the twins were. Now we have a solo tree, but just the big development, those 3 big blocks in the background are future developments that on their own will release, I think, over £500,000 for city parks. And for that, we'll be able to do more wonderful things for trees within the Preston Park area. Obviously, we've got our ongoing management of trees across the city, our management of the, the new ash that we're dealing with, and the elm disease we have been managing very well over the years, which is why we still have the national collection. And as been mentioned before, we did lose one of our twins, one of the oldest twins, oldest elms in the world, recently. But even from this death, there is a great story that is bubbling up beneath it. This is the marks of the beetle on the elm twin that passed away, which is a beautiful thing in itself. And so we're working with an artist who really did help us. The beetle of the elms, the elm beetle lives in the bark of the trees. And there was a lot of bark that had to be removed from this tree that fell down in order to make it not a problem for the rest of the elms within the city. And we got in contact with an artist who's worked with elms in the past, and voluntarily, she actually came along and painstakingly removed all the bark of this Preston Park twin. And you can see from this picture just how beautiful this tree is, even just with the bark removed. It's an amazing thing to see. So we're working to get the twin back to its place where the current twin that's still alive is in the future as part of a project which hopefully will be a little bit more artistic. And there you can see the artist there with one of her works, an elm which she's worked on in the past with gold, and that's what she typically works with. And so we're really excited that at some point in the future we will be returning this wonderful elm back to its home and its place, which has stood for hundreds of years. So just for me to finish with one of my most favorite proverbs, which is, a society grows great when old men and women plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit under. Thank you. One final thing. We're so pleased to have this project come to us. We was more than happy to support printing the documents to go forward. And we know that this Great Trees of Brighton project will be something big. And I think it's actually going to be the opposite of the technical tree strategy document that I've worked on and led on. I think it's going to be the real expansive, glowing thing that really celebrates our trees. We've got the technical bit, we know what we need to do, we know how we need to protect trees. This document is going to be something which we can really celebrate and welcome the trees that are here and the trees of the future going forward that will be our great trees. That's all from me, thank you.